So today we're going to try and unravel one of the biggest, maybe the biggest question in all of artificial intelligence. And believe it or not, it all kicks off with a really strange story.
All right, so let's jump right in. I want you to forget everything you think you know about computers, just for a second. Instead, I want you to imagine something with me.
Okay, so you wake up. You're completely alone, trapped in a room. There are no windows, and the only door is locked tight. You have absolutely no idea how you got here.
Then, something slides under the door. Actually, two things. The first is a piece of paper covered in symbols you've never, ever seen before. It's like an alien language. But the second thing is this enormous, heavy instruction manual. And this one is written completely in a language you understand perfectly.
So you open the manual, and it's basically just a giant rule book. It says things like, if you see this alien symbol, then you need to write down that alien symbol. That's it. You don't have a clue what any of this actually means, right? But hey, you're a good rule follower. So when a new note gets slipped in, you just look up the symbols, find the corresponding ones in the book, write them down, and slide your reply back out.
You do this over and over, maybe for days. And here's the real twist. On the other side of that door, there's a group of alien scientists, and they are absolutely thrilled. From their point of view, they're having this incredibly deep, meaningful conversation with you. Your responses are perfect, insightful, maybe even witty. But let me ask you, do you understand a single word of what you're saying? Of course not. Not a single word. You're just matching symbols from a book. For all you know, you could be discussing the meaning of the universe or just ordering a pizza. And this simple, kind of bizarre scenario, it gets right to the very heart of the entire debate about AI and true understanding.
See, this isn't just some weird story I made up. It's actually a famous thought experiment, and it was designed specifically to poke a big hole in what we think we know about intelligence.
This whole thing is called the Chinese room argument. It was put forward by a philosopher named John Searle way back in 1980. Now, he originally used Chinese characters in his version, but the idea was the same, to challenge the big, bold claims that were being made about artificial intelligence even back then.
So what was Searle's big question? It was this: when a computer gives all the right answers, when it seems intelligent, does that mean it actually understands what it's saying, in the same way a person does? Or is it just like you, stuck in that room, mindlessly following a really complex rulebook? And this really breaks down the whole conflict, right? It's appearance versus reality. On one side, you've got the simulation of intelligence. That's you in the room, following rules perfectly, but without any comprehension. On the other side, you've got genuine understanding, knowing the meaning behind the symbols. Searle's whole argument was that a computer, no matter how advanced, is always the person inside the room.
And this is where the whole thing just explodes, It spirals out from just being about AI and becomes a much deeper, much more personal mystery: the nature of our own minds.
Because here's the massive roadblock we run into. How can we ever hope to test for consciousness in an AI if we don't even fully understand it in ourselves? Seriously, this is one of the biggest unanswered questions in all of science. So what are we even talking about when we say consciousness? Well, think about this. You're drinking a cup of coffee. A scientist can measure the chemical reactions happening in your brain, the neurons firing, but they can't measure the experience of it. That rich, warm smell, the actual taste, the feeling of waking up. That inner world, that private movie that's always playing in your head, that is consciousness.
And this leads us to what philosophers call the hard problem, which is how? How does this 3-pound lump of wet, physical stuff, your brain, create the totally non-physical, private, subjective feeling of being you? The honest answer, we still don't know.
Okay, so let's fast forward to today, because Searle's argument was from 1980, right? And the problem has only gotten way more complicated with the kinds of super sophisticated AI we have now.
For decades, the big test for AI was the Turing test. The idea was pretty simple. If you're having a conversation and you can't tell if you're talking to a person or a computer, then the computer passes. But that's exactly what Searle was criticizing. His whole point was that just imitating intelligence isn't the same as actually having it. A machine could pass the Turing test all day long and still just be a really convincing person in the Chinese room.
But today's AI is a whole different beast. It's built on things like neural networks, and they learn by recognizing patterns in massive amounts of data. And you know what? That's sorta similar to how our own brains learn. So it starts to blur those clean lines that Searle drew all those years ago. It gets messy.
So, to try and deal with this, some researchers are coming up with these really clever new tests. They're not just trying to see if an AI can imitate a human anymore. Instead, they're probing for things that an AI could only really grasp if it had some kind of inner, subjective experience. They're asking it about dreaming, for example. Or they'll give it a wild story about two people swapping bodies and see if it can understand the concept. They are literally trying to find a way to peek inside that locked room.
So, where does this all leave us? Well, we're staring down a future that is, let's be honest, both incredibly exciting and, philosophically, pretty bewildering.
Look, the technology is just going to keep getting better and better. That's a given. But the responsibility for figuring out what it all means, for asking these tough questions and charting a path forward, well, that falls on us. As far as we know, we're the already conscious creatures around here. We're the ones in the driver's seat.
And that leaves us with one last kind of haunting question to chew on. If one day an AI looks you in the eye, or, through a screen, and says, "I am conscious, I have feelings, I understand," how could we ever know for sure if it's telling the truth? And what does it mean for all of us if we can't?